Okay. So let me minimize my screen. Why is it not minimizing? Hold up right here. Sometimes Zoom can be, oh, it's preparing. Okay, hold on. Here we go. It says you cannot minimize seat screen. Let me just open up here. Okay, here we go. The community. Baez, okay. And I'm gonna put it here and tag you. Perfect. Okay, so I tagged you so that people know. And then later on, after it finishes, you can always share it as a watch party. And then if your partner is watching it as well, they can share it as a watch party if they want to later on or during. So I'm gonna click live, and once we're live, we go live. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. So happy Monday. Happy Motivational Monday. I hope everybody's doing well. Tonight, we have a very special guest. His name is Eddie Baez, and he is someone in the community that a lot of people know. I got to know him in recent years, but I've always heard his name, and I'm so happy that he agreed to do the Community Spotlight Project because, you know, it's about sharing our stories, and I know this man definitely has a beautiful story to share. And also, you know, with the times that we're going through, I also wanted to, you know, give you guys an example of someone in the community that has been doing great work and maybe give you some, you know, words of inspiration to get through these hard times.
No pressure.
So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, you know, Eddie Baez. Eddie, would you like to say a few words about yourself and who you are?
Sure. So I'm Eddie Baez, not the DJ, although I wouldn't mind being, because people confuse that. There's like, Eddie Baez DJ. No. I grew up in Manhattan, on the Lower East Side, Puerto Rican. So my family came from Puerto Rico in the 40s. So yeah, my whole life has been spent in New York, now in New Jersey, so in this kind of area. So it forms a lot of who I am as a person. Moved to Jersey City like 12 years ago, and might be 13 now. And you know, I've really kind of grown into really liking the city and being an active part of it. So in New York, I did a lot of you know, activist type work and advocacy. And so I've taken that to Jersey City, and that's kind of a, you know, we'll talk about that, you know, as we go along, but that's, you know, what I do. I'm also a sexagenarian, so I'll put that out there. So a sexagenarian is somebody in their 60s.
All right. I didn't know that term. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I created it, so a sexagenarian will be.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, you don't look it, you know, te está cuidando. You're taking care of yourself, right?
It's the Puerto Rican in me.
Yes, of course. You know that Puerto Rican skin is like, it's like the best of all the worlds. It's a mixture of everything. Ya tú sabes. But that's awesome. That's awesome. So just to give people a little bit of background, you know, so I did, you know, Eddie and I spoke a little bit, you know, like, you know, what the Community Spotlight Project is. And, you know, I told him, I said, you know, when COVID-19 hit, I was just like, oh my God, like, you know, I know so many people are probably going through so much. How can we give back? How can I give back? What kind of an impact, you know, we know the impact that, you know, is happening in people's lives, but, you know, sometimes it's like, sometimes we got to escape. And this is a form of a little bit of an escape. And so I got to talk to Eddie, and Eddie, you told me, some cool stuff about you, about growing up, and you mentioned that you had like, a spiritual side, and I wanted, if you feel comfortable, I wanted to see if you wanted to share a little bit about that.
Sure, because I think that's part of what forms me as a person, and what drives my passion is that I grew up as a spiritualist. So if people know what that is, espiritista, so clairvoyance, mediumship, and over time, especially because I grew up in New York, exposure to Santeria, but a lot of that formed the way that I think about things, and I also grew up in a household, my parents were, so it's like my stepfather, my mother, my father, that's how I grew up. And they also had a thing about always giving back. So I told you that I always grew up with like strangers in my house, like my whole lifetime. It was like my mother would find somebody, they'd be with us for a few years, then that person would go on, somebody else would come in. But, that kind of, at one point, I turned to social work. I'm a social worker by training. I used to be a flight attendant. That's a whole other world. I had a great life with that. But when, the AIDS pandemic hit, I made a decision that, I had spent all those years, 10 years flying. It was fantastic, but I wanted to give back and do something. So I went back to school, became a social worker, and then started working in the field. And I've been doing that now for, almost like 30 years. So my whole life has been kind of dedicated to doing work around HIV and AIDS. So right now I work for the AIDS Education and Training Project and training programs. And what we do is that we, teach people about anything that has to do with HIV or AIDS to really enhance treatment. So, it's like, so it's anything from learning about PrEP to learning about latest medications. Now, more recently with the whole COVID crisis, we've had to change things around. But, that's kind of a continuation of the work that I do. And so that's my work life. So social work background, working in AIDS, but that's what my passion is, and what I think it is my passion. It must be is doing work like the Pride work, which is my very personal way to giving to the community, and it's really that is as full-time a job as the job that I have.
Yeah.
You take the whole year is like planning and, it's kind of like you're giving birth to a baby. So by the time the festival happens, like I'm like this.
Exactly.
Baby comes out. And I think when we were talking this year, it was around Jersey City Pride. And, I know that you wanted to know like what got me going through this. And I think knowing that I had that responsibility and trying to figure out how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this festival that in Jersey City up to 20,000 people came in 2019.
Wow.
And so there was no way that was going to happen. And the thing is that nobody would call it. So the city wasn't going to say you can't do it. The state wasn't going to say it because nobody really knew what the end of August was going to look like. And so even though I'm used to planning a huge outdoor event, and there's like 30 events that happen before that. So it's like 30 events during the month, and then the big festival. This year, it was just like, how are we going to do this? And so the decision was made to do it virtually.
Okay.
And Jersey City was the first place in the tri-state that they were able to do live events during a Pride celebration. So we had small, little events, 30 people, filmed them, and then that became content for a 7-hour live stream that happened the day that Pride would happen. So all of that, there was no room for me to really think too much, because I was also fortunate to be able to work from home.
Yeah.
So during this whole thing, it's been my regular job and then doing the Pride stuff, and so it's been keeping me really busy.
Yeah.
And my husband and I were doing also at the very beginning. We had a party in Jersey City called Oso.
Hmm.
We have a group on Facebook called Men of Oso, and we would have this party like once a month, men's kind of dance party in Jersey City in a lounge space. Really nice, and of course that shut down. But I think the first few months after, we kept doing them online. Um, and there was a lot of work because we would get a DJ that would give us the music. So they weren't spinning live. We would use music that they had, but Eric, my husband, would do the visuals. And that's what we were known for. And then we would have Zoom and people would either dress up or not and dance around. But, it's interesting because sometimes there were 30 people, 40 people watching, and you wonder, is it like worth it? And then I realized that's 30 or 40 people that during that time are happy.
Yes.
And they're not thinking about things. And, and I have to say, I enjoyed it as well. So dancing around to the music and but it was a fun time. Those are the types of things that I found, have helped me get through this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so I'm glad that you touched on it. Just to go back a little bit, I was going to ask you, what you do in your personal versus your professional life and how they kind of mesh, right?
Yeah.
But I think you explained it perfectly, how your work is your passion and your passion is your work, right? And I think sometimes some people, they can't separate the two, or they don't know how to make the two come together. In some way, right? And not everybody obviously has the luxury of working in the LGBT community or, around, HIV issues or things like that. But, you've been obviously, all these years, you've been smart about how you can, place your, the educational components with giving back to the community with what you do for work. And then, with the culmination of it, which I don't know, in my opinion, I think it's really the Pride Festival, how everything just comes together in such a big celebration. So I'm happy that you touched on that, because I was going to definitely ask you that.
Yeah, and something I wanted to share also is that, like, you see my Jersey City, because I'm Jersey City proud shirt, but there's something unique about this city because coming from New York, like I said, years of working in the field, years of activism and advocacy, and, in New York City, it was like very small fish in a huge, huge pond. In Jersey City, it's a totally different experience. If you want to make a difference in this city, it's so easy to do it. So, like, I know the mayor, I know the council people, and it wasn't like anything difficult to do. And so it's been interesting because of Pride, I started noticing that people in Jersey City, especially younger LGBT people, would come up to me and be like, "Oh, thank you for what you do." And I was just like, how do I know you? But now I realize if anybody comes up to me, then it's because of, what I do. But I guess besides Pride, something else that I do, because there's a Pride website that I administer, then there's a Pride page. But Eric and I started something called Gayborhood Jersey City,
which I love.
That was a way to get to know people in the community. Yes. And at first it was really about, a way that we could bring people together to do social events at Pint, our local gay bar here. And at a certain point, Eric decided that he didn't want to do it. I was going to continue with it. And then I started to take it in a little bit of a different direction. I started to realize that if I found something interesting, then let me put it out there and see if other people like it. So I started to learn how to curate. Some people hate that word, but it is what you do. Like, take from different sources, put it out there, educate the community. But then, it could be fun stuff as well, or, people are looking for apartments, they go on there. But that group has grown to be over 3,000 people now. And so, and it's been a way to get the word out. we don't have newspapers here or magazines, anything with any
Exactly.
LGBT content. So it's social media is what people look at. And so there's also between neighborhood and pride, there's a huge link
Okay.
because, the work that I do in neighborhood, that kind of gets people to know about pride. And so those things are together. I also
Yeah.
have an LGBT fitness page
Awesome.
and a site called SpaceBoysToys. That's for people that like sci-fi toys and vintage robots and stuff. So
That's awesome. That's
that
awesome.
keeps me busy too.
Yes, yes, yes. So, well, I personally, and I'm sure that so many people maybe watching would love to say thank you, because it is not easy to manage a lot of the things that you're managing. It is not easy to manage a page and to, like you said, curate, to get content, to make sure that you keep people engaged, and then to get it to the point that you've grown it is an amazing feat. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, just, keeping the momentum of year after year, thinking, how are you going to make this better, that better? As someone who kind of, delves a little bit into little things like that, I know, trust me,
Yeah.
I get in my own head about stuff. So you must be very organized. I'm definitely not.
Well, there's some things like I think, that was like we have a mutual friend, Joseph, who was,
Yep.
working with me on Pride this year. And his area of expertise is really about filming. And, he was the one who was able to get the content up. But he said he was surprised to see the way my mind works.
Uh-huh.
Because, a lot of it is up here. And that's the thing with Pride that I learned is that, it's the vision is here. It's not like there's a board. Most other prides have a whole group of people that are working on things. And I tend to, I work and then I have people that work with me in different areas, but I don't have to, ask people about doing things. So in the end, what you see that day is, what I see in my head.
Yeah.
But that's how my brain works.
Exactly.
I can do
Exactly. I mean,
tons
would
of
you?
things at the same time.
Yeah. Well, would you consider yourself like a visionary?
I would think like if I think about something like Pride, yeah.
Yeah.
Having to look kind of, but I had to learn how to do that also.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I went to work at GMHC, I used to work there in the volunteer department, and I was very focused on the here, the now, and I really couldn't think beyond, which is what you have to do to become, like eventually I would become a director and stuff. And you always have to be ready. You always have to have that plan B.
Yep.
You always have to think about, how things might turn out. You can't just do it. So you can't just write an email and send it out. So you learn, those are skills that you learn over time. And so I think I've grown into understanding that I can see a vision, I can make it happen. But Pride is really what I think does that more than anything. Because that changes every year. So it's a different theme. Trying to figure out what the theme is going to be this year, but I refuse to do that until after Election Day. Because it might be like, we're celebrating the 20s, back to the roaring 20s, or
Yep.
So I'm not going to think about anything else.
Yes. No, so true, so true. I'm just going to read you a few comments because I'm watching as people are commenting. So Joe joined, and we got Dorian in the house. Okay.
Hey, Dorian.
And he said, "Hey, Boricua power." And he said that he actually met his third husband on the neighborhood, JC. I don't know if that's real or a joke, but I'm happy for you, Dorian. Because he's a jokester.
Yeah.
OMG.
Well, he's on the 5th now, so I mean.
Oh yeah. But it's so I'll tell you just something real quick, personal. I did the whole moving to New York thing, and I met my partner now, and I moved back to Jersey, and I felt a little bit lost. And it wasn't honestly until I just started browsing, and I said, well, I see that so many people are part of the neighborhood, JC. Why not join? And I get most of my local gay news, seriously, from the neighborhood, and I even see how people they'll share, hey, look, I just moved into town. What's there to do? And I love that people feel welcomed enough to just share, like, hey, look, this is a place where you can go and just find friends, find out, how you can connect the local scene. Maybe people are looking for drag queens. You can look for your local drag queens. It's like so much, but it's so important. And sometimes, if you don't think, if you ever have your moments where you don't think your work is important, it's super important.
Cool. Well, I think like for one thing that also is cool about Gayborhood, it's really, I think it's really important for the gay community to, really be open and learn about the trans community, what people go through. And the one thing I won't allow on Gayborhood is any kind of transphobia. And that, it's amazing. I might have had to shut people down maybe once or twice, and then after that, everybody kind of knows. And so that's also important to me, is to kind of like find content that's, geared towards women, that's geared towards young kids. I also this year joined with some other people to create something called the Jersey City Pride Alliance. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do projects together. But what it is, it's me representing Gayborhood. There's a photographer who's fantastic. She's part of the group. There's somebody who's from a group called Moms Hugs. So like at Pride, you'll see them all come out, moms and dads, and they hug people. So that group, there's a woman who has a group called Tertium Quid. And Tertium Quid is a camp for trans kids.
Awesome.
And so she's there. And then somebody from PFLAG, Jersey City. So we all got together and formed this to kind of try and educate families. And so the focus of that is when we do workshops is on things like bullying and issues that are important to kids. One thing I would love to help create is something for youth. We do have, not to say that we don't have youth projects, but it's usually things are geared towards kids that are either homeless or at risk. And one of the things that has come out is that there's young queer and, kids that, are coming out now. They're living in stable homes, but they don't have a place to go to.
Exactly.
And so, they've been reaching out. And so that's kind of amazing, so that it's just like, oh, here's another group that really needs help. Because they feel like, oh, nobody really, knows about us or really cares about us. And those kids are a lot of times really at risk, in terms of suicide and stuff. So, trying to do that, and this other group is kind of helping with that piece. So, yeah, I guess I split off again to another thing that I do.
Yeah, no, but that's awesome. And it's like, the great thing that I see that you have is that you know how to fill in the gaps, you know what I mean? And I think that, not everyone can recognize that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then sometimes something that I think about, once we become adults, sometimes we forget that there's such a little tight window from the time an adolescent becomes an adult, right? From like 13 to like 18. After that 18 mark, there's a plethora of things that individual may be already involved in or is about to be involved in. And that can mean anything. And so for that individual to be able to look somewhere and be like, I see myself there, is super, super, super important, because obviously, the parents may not be talking about it. At school, they may not hear about it, and then we all know, the friends may have information, but we know, sometimes our friends are not the best information in those years, right? But, so if they're looking online, which we know that, youth right now are all over social media, just like ourselves, hey, you got to meet them where they're at. And so I think that's awesome. Yeah. And they're the future. They're the ones who are going to be coming to all the events. They're the ones who are going to be browsing on, the Gayborhood. They're the ones who are going to be meeting you and saying, oh, you're Eddie Baez.
And there's the ones that, again, I get the Youth Activist Award. We've had a few that have, I don't know if you know Eddie Acosta, Anita Tension.
No.
The drag name is Anita Tension. And Eddie's really incredible. First recipient of our, Youth Activist Award, because joined around the time of Pulse. He lives, I think, either in Harrison or Kearney. In both of those towns, there were problems with homophobia. And so after Pulse, he got together a group of people, and it was pretty amazing because somebody told him about me and they said, oh, you should call him up and, maybe he can help you out. And I asked a few questions and I'm like, you have it all down. I mean, you have permission from the different police departments, you got the water stuff covered, you have volunteers. And it was like 100+ people that marched from one city to the other one. And Eddie led the march as Anita.
How beautiful. I love it.
So it was, that was like the first award. And each year we've recognized, somebody who's a youth. And, we've had a couple of kids that are trans kids. We've had some really fantastic, representation from the youth community. So it's really special to me.
That's amazing. No, totally agree. If you can invest, why not invest, in the youth, man? They're super important. They're the ones who are going to keep it up, and I don't know. What do you think, Eddie? Do you think that each generation gets better?
No. What I'm thinking about is that each generation, it's like, for instance, I have a nephew who's gay. He's like, his life is different than mine. Because of me, the way my sister is with him, fortunately for him, I think that that's helpful. So in terms of, him not having to deal with stuff like that, each generation has more resources, there's more you can do. But I think we're entering an age where people will also say, because of everything that we can do, people are also isolating. So there's a lot of communicating this way.
Yes.
And people are not really going out there. And I mean, it's not just in the gay scene where people say, oh, they miss going to a bar, and cruising was a thing.
Yeah.
Before you can get online. And what's happening now is that kids are starting to just, be on their computers and not really get out there. So, it's like each generation is different. I don't think,
not necessarily
this one
that
is
it gets
better, but I think life might be getting better a little bit. One thing I wanted to touch on is, I realized also there's a few years back I went to it was a spiritual retreat, but it was spiritual in the sense is that people came from all sorts of, different doctrines and theologies. And so, it was anything from Wiccan to born again Christian to spiritualist, but it was all men. And we gathered on some mountain in Asheville, very and spent like a week. And it was very interesting because it was a call to elders. And so the whole idea of doing it is at the end, you commit to be an elder in your community and lead.
Yes.
And I think after I did that, it really kind of, stuck in my head that's, if I want my life to have purpose, I just don't want to I love to go out. I love to have a lot of fun. I'm like the first one to do stuff, but I need to have a purpose because otherwise, and my family, I love my family. I love my husband. That's not enough of a purpose for me. I need somehow to know that maybe I'll make a mark.
Yes.
And so, and that's not an ego thing. It's just what I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. So this idea of being an elder has, been something that's been good. And that's a driving force. It's like leading by example.
I agree. I mean, I totally agree that, you gotta find something for yourself that gives you that sense of purpose. And sometimes that is very much outside of other things, doesn't mean that any of those other things are less important. So I totally agree. And I mean, I love that you see yourself that way because maybe not a lot of people, would see themselves that way. You touched on something that I wanted to just touch on, because I date an older man and he says, what he sees that nowadays is that, he remembers a time when ignorance was bliss. And it's like now it's like so much like in your face, you know, and I remember a time before social media as well, but I was younger, right? And now to see, like, I guess, you know, the pros and cons, I totally agree. I just wanted to make that point because, right, you know, it's just something that I guess we're facing, and who knows if everything, you know, is everything that we're going through is a sign or something, you know, for us to kind of like slow down and remember what's important in our lives, right? Can I ask you a funny question?
Yeah.
All right. What have you been doing to have fun or stay busy during COVID-19?
Besides like Pornhub?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. What have I been doing? Actually, like, you know, going out with friends, you know, doing brunch stuff. I mean, there's limited things that you can do. I love to travel. That's one of the big things that I miss. That one of the areas that I cover for my job is Puerto Rico. So I was used to going there every 2 months, and now it's been almost a year, you know, but I haven't been able to go back. And so that's always been something that's really great. But, you know, I've had to learn how to, you know, adjust to what's fun because, you know, it's not like you can just call up a group of friends or go to a party or, you know, because in all these things that I am, so like to give you an even more rounded version of me, because there's all these like things. I Up until recently, I was a promoter. Like I said, we have our own party, but I was promoting a party in the city called Brute, which is a men's kind of leather party. And so it's like, you know, so I had all this other stuff going on, and then in the hours at night, you know, I would do that kind of stuff. So, you know, that also brought me a lot of joy. But, you know, now, like, I've had to learn how to shift. And like you said, it's like, it's the interaction, spending more one-on-one time with friends, getting into maybe a little deeper conversations than normal. But.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what do you feel, what do you think is like a real big driving force in your life that just keeps you going? Do you think it's just how you were born, or do you think that there's something that inspires you every day?
To be honest with you, it's like the mama's boy is going to come out. But, you know, my mother has been a huge source of inspiration because, you know, I've seen her over a lifetime go through a lot of different challenges in her life from when she was a little girl all the way to an adult. And, you know, and then we went through our own stuff for years. But in the last like 10 years, I've seen her go through different illnesses and stuff. And you have to be honest, like I look at her and I'm like, wow, that's what I come from, because her, you know, her will to live, you know, it's pretty amazing. And so I think that that's the driving thing. Plus, like I said, she's like the source for the spirituality and, you know, the way she's led her life. So I think that that's been something big for me that, you know, when I want to give up sometimes, it's just like, you know, nah. And, you know, you were saying something about ignorance is bliss. The spiritual part that I was talking about, spiritualism, one of the things with that is that I've had people like, oh, I want to be like you, I want to do this. And I keep telling them, it's not like a swinging door. You don't like open up to consciousness and then get to close it. Because once you do, guess what? Like now I have to be accountable for what I do. You know, it's not like I don't know what I'm doing. You know, so maybe, and that's a total thing up here, but that comes from that, you know, really, once you kind of step into that world and you start leading a life, kind of like a spiritual life like that, then, you know, I find that you don't get to be like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, or, you know.
No, that's commendable. It's like you're being accountable and taking ownership. So that's awesome. I totally think, like, I mean, I know you probably mean it in a different way, but the way I usually won't touch on something unless I know I can follow through with it. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? So I kind of get it, what you're trying to say. And I think that people can maybe relate to that. And maybe, so just to take that a step further, I think sometimes when people, they may hold back, right?
Mhm.
What would you tell someone if just someone who says, oh, let's say whatever it is, they want to be, they want a new job, or they're afraid, to just date, or, they hold back so much. What would you tell that person to push them forward?
To do? Again, I lead by example. It's not like at my age that I don't struggle with
Mm-hmm.
these things myself. And so I could have be producer of Pride. I could do all these things, have a great job, do all of this. But, I struggle sometimes with, with wanting to accomplish things, like pushing myself. And, I have my own inhibitions. And so, I tell people, like, a couple of years ago, I decided I needed to do a breakthrough. So I took a burlesque class. And then they had like a little recital at the end where I had to do like a strip tease. And so
Whereby,
that like broke me out of something. It really, because then like any kind of body issues that I had, stuff like that, I started to be able to release that. But I share that with people because, at different ages, it's like, it's normal to feel that.
yeah.
But, I encourage people to talk to somebody. Don't like hold that in. I'm a big advocate for those people that are open to it in therapy. I'm a therapist myself. So, but, I have no shame in my game. I've been when I need it to help me kind of like recalibrate and think. But
That's
I
awesome.
don't want to be cliche and say, oh, everybody, if you put your mind to it, you can do it, because that's not always true.
I agree.
You
It's
know,
not always true. It's not true.
uh,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So what's amazing, and I told you a little bit about the history of the Community Spotlight Project, and how it starts, and kind of like what it gets to by the end of it. And this is like the essence. Like, because as we're talking, I just feel like, as you're opening up and you're sharing your story, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and just being like, what, I still have these things as a what is it, sexitarian?
sexagenarian,
Vegetarian.
sexagenarian.
So, even it doesn't go away, but
It doesn't.
you gotta push through no matter what, because that's what life is. And I'm so happy that you brought up your mother, because, hey, look, it's about, looking from where you came from, literally, sometimes, and just looking to those strong examples in our lives of those rocks, you know what I mean? And
It's not,
uh-huh.
yeah. No, I was going to say, it's how I choose to lead my life is really not only with that sense of purpose, but also wanting to continuously grow.
Yeah.
And so, that's been something that I don't want to just settle. There's always something new for me to learn. And that's been something that drives me. And also a willingness to say, I don't know this, I don't know
Yep.
how to do this, or, I need help. Those are things that I encourage people to also be able to, if, it's okay to ask for
Yes.
help, or I don't know how to, but I think a lot of times we get into this thing of wanting to, be perfect. I certainly go through that when I, comb my hair in the mirror like the 100th time. I have to tell you, I'm hating my lighting. I really hate my lighting.
Really? Oh no.
No, because I look green. But
No. To
but
me, on my side, you look
on your
okay.
side it looks all right.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's for me, it's always been about what can I do differently today, and I do meditate in the mornings. So
Awesome.
that's something that also starts me just kind of like focusing my day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and kind of trying to breathe. Uh, that's very important too. Breathe when you're stressed.
Exactly.
That helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Eric is your partner?
Yeah.
Yeah. He says sexy genarian.
Sexy.
Sexy genarian.
Sexy.
Wepa, hello. If you don't mind me asking, are you guys like, is there a difference? How do you know, like, an age? Is there anything you wanted to share about, relationships in general?
Oh yeah, sure. So we met online,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't through like, it wasn't Scruff or that still wasn't around yet. But they were just starting things, and there was something called Plan It Out, which
Okay.
was almost like a neighborhood.
Okay.
It was a place where people would come, and they had social parts, and they had a like a dating section. So we were like the Plan It Out couple for a while. But he's 52.
Okay.
And so I'm 64, so there's a 12-year difference. And, like from when we first met.
Hey,
Oh, there he is.
Eric.
Oh, there he is.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
So I think the age difference really, because I think the way that I think, and we had a lot of things in common, so we just kind of grew from there. But it's been pretty much like always together. So it's going to be 18 years
Oh,
on
wow.
Tuesday.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Beautiful.
Actually, no. Tuesday is our anniversary, wedding anniversary, and then March it'll be 18 years. So you know how you have to have two?
Yes. Oh, I agree. I totally agree.
The legal one is 7 years, and that's on Tuesday. But together, we've been together 18 years. So and like I think it happens to a lot of people that are in couples for a while. People will say, "Well, what's the secret?" And it's just like, I don't know. Like, there really isn't a secret. It's really about, either, I think a big thing is communication. And even that, over the years, if you're in a couple, you have to you have to learn how to do that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable, I think, is a big thing.
Definitely.
And that's what has made me really happy, is that I don't have to be a certain way around him. Like, he can come in the morning, and I'll be in front of my computer with my headsets on, and I'm like dancing around to Rita Ora, singing, and he's just like looking at me, and I'm like, bouncing around, and but I don't feel like I have to be a certain way. And I've been in relationships where I felt like there was an expectation of who I was, and so I think that could be the key, is just being able to be whoever I want to be, even like stripper, burlesque guy.
Yes. Well, I think the people of the world want to know, are you ever going to do a showcase again?
I actually told the woman who I took the class with that I wanted to do more. Yeah. But I also told her that I don't think that at the moment that she did it, she realized the impact that it was going to have. It was no coincidence that we had 6 people take the class, and 6 or 7, and I would say half of the people had gone through some kind of abuse, sexual abuse. And so it's interesting that you would then put yourself through a thing that has to be healing, and it's about exposing your body. And everybody said the same thing. There was a growth that happened that it was unexpected. But for me, it was just like a certain, freedom that came with that. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I could do it again. Only if Harmonica Sunbeam is MC.
There you go. Okay, I agree with that. Well, I love it. I mean, so I wanted to say, definitely, we're in a time where there's no shame in meeting someone online. Thank God, not anymore. It's not as taboo as it used to be, right? I met my partner on Grindr, and we're so open about that, right? And then I love how you said that, you purposely challenged yourself with taking a burlesque class, because sometimes it's really about that. I honestly, I went through a little bit of a crisis at one point, and I took an improv class. I said, I need something to wake me the fuck up. Literally, right? Just because you have to jolt yourself, shake yourself a little bit. And it kind of works. It just takes your mind to a different place, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important that you say that, because I don't want to, even though I've accomplished a lot, even I have to say that when I look back at my life over time, but I can say that there's been those moments where I've been stuck, and that's where the therapy part was I had a job that was, great pay, high profile, but it was something that even though everybody else could think I was doing a great job, it involved a lot of budgets and stuff. And I'm not a numbers person. So for me, I applied myself to the point that, for months, I didn't take a day off. And I was working 10 or 11 hours a day. And even though I wasn't aware, other people started picking up on what happened because I started closing and not communicating. And, it's probably, I was stressed and depressed, but also had to figure out, what's my next step going to be. And so, that was a time that it's just like, okay, that's where you start to, okay, what if I go to the gym? What's the first thing I could change is the physical. So maybe if I align my brain with thinking, okay, as I do this, then, the other part is coming along with it. But I needed to do something, like you said, to shake myself up. And, take more classes, do something different. But I do, I have gotten stuck. It's been a while, but I'm, the first one to say that, I've had that happen a few times in my life. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And what do you think has been, if more than one, definitely share, but, what have been some of your biggest life lessons that you feel like you could share with others? I know that one's a little bit of a deep one.
No, it's trying to think because, which way I'd like to take it. I mean, I do think that there's some truth into treating people, the way you want to be treated. I can't expect for somebody to treat me with respect if I don't treat them with respect or, acknowledge their accomplishments. Everybody's very sensitive. So that's been a big thing for me on like how I am with people. I've also learned in my lifetime, and this is more like on the business side, to give people an out. Because I don't know what part of me is very sharp and it's hard to get over on me on stuff. But, even in the workplace, sometimes people do things and I know it's wrong and I could very easily go back to the emails that they send and like, make them wrong. And what I've learned to do is to give people an out, and, I told somebody the other day, it's kind of, if you ever had a hamster as a kid and you play with them and they're all fluffy and cute, put it in the cage and you go to reach for it and the same thing that's fluffy and cute will back up. And then they like show you their teeth and they get really scared. But I said, people are like that. If you push them into a corner, so give them the out. It's kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if this is what you meant to say. And of course, no, that's not what I meant. The part of me inside of here is going, yeah, that's what you meant. But that's worked for me. And I think what it is, and then also trying to, and I don't even do this thinking wise, but people have told me that even my tone and everything tends to be like this kind of, I can get excited and stuff, but, especially if something is bothering me, I pull back, I center before I say anything. And that's been important also. It's a little frustrating sometimes when you're with people and, you're arguing or doing stuff. And then I have to like stop and I look like I'm not saying anything. It's just like my brain is going. I'm trying to figure out what to say and not just come out with anything.
That's awesome.
There's power in words.
Yes. Yes.
And that's, that's huge.
So sometimes it's better to just like, get a real good thought process going on before you actually share, maybe, because it might not come out the right way. Or the way
for me, yeah, it's like,
yeah. No, I totally agree. So if I could, before ending, definitely I wanted you to, maybe have some closing words, but I definitely just wanted to say that, and I don't want you to think that I'm being like, oh my God, like all mushy, like, oh, I look up to you, Eddie, like, but genuinely, I do look up to you. I do look up to you in so many ways, from what I've gotten to know, from what I've gotten to see, and now I've actually gotten to hang out with you a few times. You know, and I genuinely find you, respectfully, you know, so interesting, you know, and I'm happy that you touched on your, because that is the part that I think I find so interesting. There's a way about how you express yourself, which is very interesting and intriguing, because it's like, oh, you know, Eddie, I know you probably got a wild side. I haven't seen that necessarily, but you know, I commend you, because I know that, you know, with you doing so much, you know, you definitely got to have your outlets of sorts, and you know, but you know, I genuinely think that, you know, you are an inspiring figure, to all of us here, that's watching, but also to the local community. Just like you said earlier, in New York, you can easily get lost. You're fishing in the sea, basically, right? And you know, I feel like here you are making a big difference. And you know, I think a lot of people can follow your example. And I want to thank you also for paving the way, because that's what it takes. You know, paving the way for others, you know, to hopefully follow in those footsteps, and you know, continuously, you know, each generation can make it better. You know, and learn, because we got to learn, you know, just like you were saying, as being an elder, and you know, you seeing yourself like that. It's like you know, I genuinely, I enjoy when someone actually takes the time to explain something to me, because I don't know all the answers, right? And I think that so many people maybe are afraid, especially 20s and 30s, they're afraid to say I'm wrong, or I don't know the answer, or you know, right? But you know, so I wanted to share that. But is there anything that you wanted to share in closing?
Yeah, I just realized that there's something huge that I missed, of like how I've been able to deal with COVID is, and I'm going to put it out there, but I'm like a reality show junkie. So, you know, 90 Day Fiance, before the 90 days, 90 Day Happily Ever After, Married at First Sight. And it's funny because those shows, I don't think. Otherwise, I'm thinking all the time. And the crying that I haven't been able to do, because I've been so busy with work, when I watch shows like that, I sit there and Eric will like look at me and he shakes his head, because I sit there and I start crying. And I'm like, you know what it is? I think it's because I need the release.
Yeah.
And because I'm so responsible with other areas, I've had to figure out something, you know. So that's been a big thing. And then I'm going to try and see if I could turn the camera around so you could see, you get an idea, like if you look up here, like all the plants.
Yes.
But that's been huge. I probably have, I'll say like close to 100.
Wow.
And I tend to them every day. So that's also been something that calms me down. It's kind of like a meditation almost, because you know, you're taking that time, and I'm not thinking about other things. I'm thinking about the plants, their leaves or whatever. But yeah, I don't think, you know, it's trying to think, what could I leave people with?
Well, I'm just going to tell you
it's like, you know, for me, it's like I was saying, you know, for me, it's important to find my passion and to go with that. And I can honestly say, sharing with people that are out there, that if I look at people in my family and stuff that kind of got to an age and stopped living, you know, it's kind of like, what are you going for? What is it that you want to do? And aging comes right along with that. So for people, if you want to learn how to stay young, it's like keep active.
Yes.
You know, keep your mind active, keep your body active. It's a machine. So if you don't move it, guess what happens? You know, you get those achaques, and it's like, you know, so, yeah, but I think those are things that are important. You know, keep your mind active, your body active, be kind.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to love.
Yes.
You know, friends, family, you know.
Yes. So. Eddie, what can people look forward to in 2021? As far as some of your projects?
2021, well, a big one is going to be Pride. And that's going to be huge. It'll be the 20th anniversary of Jersey City Pride.
Really?
Yeah. So this one that just passed, we called it Emerald because it was the 20th time that it was done.
Okay.
But the next one is the actual 20th anniversary. So, looking forward to that. And, so I was talking to somebody today, it's just like from City Hall. They were like, oh, maybe you should plan on virtual. And I'm like,
no, I know.
But, you have to.
Yeah.
And so that's something, I have some projects. I have one that just has never, I've never been able to complete it. But I had years ago, I was a therapist to somebody who was in his late 70s, early 80s, and his husband of 43 years had passed away.
Oh.
And in preparing for the funeral, he came across his box. That the box literally fell in front of him, and out came all these letters. And there were letters that were written for the first year of their relationship. There 2 or 3 times a day, telegrams. So I spent a few years working on that, but he had not read those letters in all that time. So the first thing that we did is that we read them to each other. And so then he got to see, and for me it was incredible, he got to see the man who he was, and he didn't recognize him. Like when he read his words, he was just like, really? I said that? Because there were like a few things that they went through, but it was like, okay, this is interesting. And then eventually I pulled together some of the letters to do a play, which we did together. And in there, I have all the letters, and there's hundreds of them. So I think, there's a project that I have that I need to complete, which is either to see it as a play or to do it as a book. But then I realized that part of the story is my story with him. So it's kind of like his letters, but then there's, this, at the time, like a 31 or 32-year-old with somebody in their 70s and what that did for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's, I'm going to put it out there so that maybe that's like, if you say it, then it has to happen. So
there you go. Exactly.
I think a book or something. Yeah. Yeah. Just get it out there.
Awesome. Exactly. Yeah. Oh man. Well, this was fun. This is, like I told you, this great conversation is fun, and, thank you again for opening up and being vulnerable and sharing, personal stuff. But, I think that's the beauty of life in the world, right? It's about like, hey, look, man, like, maybe, you don't know how to get past something, or, maybe some people who are going through really difficult times who don't want to get out of bed the next morning. It's okay. You know what I mean? Nobody has the secret recipe or, the answers, but that's okay. As long as you do try your best to do your best. Right. That's what's important. Yeah. And then, are there any pages that you wanted to mention where people can, follow or follow you?
Sure. So, the big one, Neighborhood Jersey City. It's a Facebook page. There's a Jersey City Pride Festival page on Facebook. And there's a website, jerseycitypride.com. That, for people to know, it needs to be updated. So I'll be working on that soon, but I take a little break after Pride because it could be crazy. I think Neighborhood is like a big one. If people want to know what's going on in this area, or have some entertaining stuff, I would suggest that. And then I have my own, Eddie Baez, and it's Robo Poppy. Easy to find.
Okay, very good, very good. And I just wanted to say many blessings to you and your husband, Eric. He says, Eric says, shout out to JCLGO. That's the page, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, JCLGO is, they were the founders of Pride.
Oh, okay,
and so Pride actually was a group of volunteers, incredible people, and for like 12 years they ran Pride. Okay. So they're like they're the foundation of everything. Of the more recent times, it's happened the last 20 years. Oh shit. Yeah, so it's, they're a really great group of people. I'm glad he remembered.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this Community Spotlight project with Eddie Baez. As he said, you can definitely, follow, find, and support a lot of what he's involved with. And make sure that you look at the comments, because I see that Joe and a couple of others were sharing some of the pages. So you can all get involved today, right now. And Eddie, once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you.
Brother. All right, my Puerto Rican brother. All right, keep on doing great things. And mira, I hope, maybe Joe can bring us all together again.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right,
yeah.
All right. And I hope to meet your partner. I haven't met your partner yet.
Yep.
Many
Take
blessings.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining.